Right, hello all. I'm Alex Farrant. I'll be giving you a talk about radio stuff for a change. A bit about myself. I've worked in radio for over 20 years. Started out in electronic warfare in the forces, then became a security researcher with these characters in the corner over at Context, and then in the last few years have been doing my own company over in Barnwood. We do propagation modeling, which is very niche, and you'll be pleased to know there's only a very small amount of that in this presentation. This presentation is not a sales pitch for my company. It's about the theory behind Wi-Fi and how it's used in the context of penetration testing, or how it's not used, more to the point. So the title, Long Range Wi-Fi Magic. Magic is a word I used to hear banded around by pen testers when they would try to articulate how radio works. They would just say it's magic. And it's interesting because it is complicated, it is hard. And what I want to do is try and boil that down into something that's applicable, something that's practical, rather than just lots and lots of theory, and that makes people switch off. Okay, this is my opinion, trigger warning, of a typical Wi-Fi assessment as performed by a pen testing firm. It's always on premises, key point. It's easy to scope. Guest network, corporate network, copy paste. Light touch on layer one. And by layer one, I mean the physical aspects of frequencies, power, coverage, modulation. That will get a very light mention in the report. Most of the report will be higher up the stack. It will be talking about your radius, about your rubbish pre-shared key, about the rubbish guest network. There's always issues on the guest network. They always get implemented with the best of intention. I can see some people giggling already. They always get implemented with the best of intentions. Let's have a guest network for our guests. Good idea. There's churn in a company. People move on. People move on, new people. Let's have a Grafana dashboard. Let's have a Grafana dashboard so we can see our guests logging on. And before you know it, your guest network's no longer segmented. You're just your corporate network under a different name. So the Wi-Fi tests normally bear fruit. I think it's fair to say. There's normally issues, and they're normally the same issues. But I'm not aware of many people doing these tests from beyond the premises, from doing it from another premises, from doing it across the road, from simulating a hostile actor, targeting that business in the same way that Walmart was targeted with a long-range Wi-Fi hack years ago. I don't know if any of you remember this one. It was a long-range hack on Walmart, and it was delivered from the car park. Walmart car parks in the States are vast. And so it's delivered with a directional antenna over some time. It wasn't done in half an hour. It was delivered in stages over many weeks, and it was delivered from an extreme distance. Okay, the legal bit. This is just a 20-minute presentation, so I'm just going to skirt over this. All right, US power limits in the UK. I've seen this a few times with pen testers who say, oh, I've got this great gadget off Amazon. It's really powerful. Okay? Just because it's on Amazon doesn't mean it's fit for use in the UK. The limit in the UK is 20 dBm, which is 100 milliwatts. If you're in America, 30 dBm, so 1 watt. Okay, that's 10 times more powerful. So if you're using US equipment with US power limits in the UK, you're actually in breach of Ofcom regulations, because this is a different ITU region. They're not going to come after you. They only come after people when there's a lot of complaints, as happened in a valley in Wales a couple of months ago. There was an old lady with a TV, and it was malfunctioning, and it was killing everybody's Wi-Fi in this valley. Enough complaints reaches a threshold. Ofcom starts sending vans out, but their resources are very limited. Anyway, saving a PCAP. A lot of people are guilty of this. Everybody likes Wireshark. I love Wireshark. Running a PCAP, yes. Running a PCAP and saving it whilst in monitor mode, as Google did years ago with Street View. They got sued. They paid millions for doing that. That's interception. That's saving off other people's information, saving off the content. And so you don't do that. That's bad. There's a little asterisk, unless you're doing this in a controlled environment or have a warrant. Okay, most of you don't. Controlled environment, that's doing it in a box. So you get a big Ramsey box, costs a couple of £1,000, and you can do what the hell you like inside that box. Okay, recording baseband with an SDR. So by baseband, we mean just opening up the SDR and just recording everything, even if the signal is encrypted. So if you tune this over to LTE 800 and record it all, even if you think, oh, that's encrypted, that's interception, because you might be able to decrypt that later date in the future. So you don't do that. It'll also fill up your disk because baseband's massive. But it's not all bad. I want people to be empowered to know what is good, what they can do, because this isn't about beating people with a stick. It's about education. So scanning the ISM bands, which are designed for innovation, they're designed for people to work in at low cost without a license. That's good. Testing a network security with permission, obviously same as a wired network. Yep. And applying antenna theory to use a network at a long range, hence the subject of this talk. That's very good. And you don't need to use 30 dBm of power. You can use low power. You just apply theory to stay within the law, but also access that network from a very long, long way away. Okay, I don't know how well you can see those pictures there, but this is a comparison of what's possible versus what's practical. Some chaps up a mountain here with a giant parabolic dish, and they're working a Wi-Fi link over 300 kilometers. Now, that's an incredible headline. It's great for publicity, but it's not at all practical. You require a lot of equipment, a lot of expertise, but more importantly, you require a mountain, because 300 kilometers, you think of the Earth's curvature, 300 kilometers, that's several hundred meters of gain in height. You need a mountain in order to achieve that line of sight. So in one respect, it's impressive. In another, it's actually not that impressive. What's more practical is a cantenna. So that picture there is just a tin can plugged into a sort of 20-pound alpha card, and that gives you 12 dBi of gain. 12 dBi of gain will get you a long way. So cantennas were all the rage years ago. You can still buy them now. I recommend you make one because it's a really good exercise in recycling, but also antenna theory, because you will be using antenna theory in order to make that cantenna good. If you can't just shove an alpha card into a cantenna and hope it's going to be good. You have to put it in exactly the right distance in order to achieve the optimal wavelength. But with a good cantenna, you can get a couple of kilometers. Right. This question is why I have a business. How far? Okay, how far will my signal go? It's a how long a piece of string question. It varies not just by the hardware, it varies not just by the environment, it varies by the time of day, it varies by the season. Okay? Some of it is obvious, so height, obstructions, local noise. Some not so obvious. Windows. Windows is a big topic. Often get lots of emails about windows and glass and coatings in my inbox. Windows and glass have become incredibly complicated in the last few years. Glass is much more efficient, has much more layers than it used to. The net result is that for a Wi-Fi signal or a 5G signal, going through a glass window is much more complicated now. If you hit it perpendicular, straight on, you'll sail through the glass with a cost of a couple of decibels. For higher wavelength signals, it could be quite significant. It could be up to 10 decibels. If you hit the glass at an angle, you bounce straight off. That's how screen protectors work. So you can't see the screen from an angle, but you stand in front of the screen and see the screen clearly. And with Wi-Fi, it's just the same. So that picture's quite nice. Found that on Google. It's an office building in London. Those people working at night are utterly oblivious as to how exposed they are. And it's just the same with your Wi-Fi networks, because each one of these offices will have Wi-Fi networks, and they will be radiating. And if it's an office building, they will be going for a long, long way. So how far can you get? Well, using the power limits in the EU, at least 20 dBm, about 300 meters with a monopole antenna. But, and it is a big but, it all depends. It all depends on the environment. If you're in Venezuela and you're in the jungle and there's no man-made noise, you'll probably get much further. If you're on a mountain, 300 kilometers. But with a Yagi antenna or a cantenna or a parabolic, which you can buy commercially from stores, because long-range Wi-Fi links is a big industry now. You can go and buy these antennas as you can pick up on eBay or anywhere for under 50 quid. You can get many kilometers on ISM band. There's a tool I recommend here, free tool, Pasternak. It's a freeze calculator. So it's a little path loss calculator. It allows you to punch in your figures, and it will give you a distance. And so you can start with a distance and say, what would my signal strength be at that distance? Or you could start with a signal strength and work backwards and say, how far is that distance? It's a field test here. We went up Crickley Hill. So if you don't know Crickley Hill, it's just at the back here. It overlooks Cheltenham and Gloucester. It's a lovely view. And because it overlooks, you're able to get a magnificent range with an antenna onto local Wi-Fi networks. So we had a 18 dBi Yagi, so quite big. It's about 1 meter long. It was the one that was at the opening slide, and we popped it on a mast with a very cheap adapter, because I don't want to demonstrate great range with expensive equipment, because that's an own goal. So saying we achieved 10 kilometers, but I had to spend £1,000, that's not very clever. But if I could spend under 100 quid and get a couple of kilometers, that is much more attractive, and it's a much more common risk that you're going to have an attacker with that sort of budget who's able to target a network from such a distance that you wouldn't even see them doing it. So what did we get? Well, that's Sherdington down there. We looked up a couple of the APs that we were seeing. We had a signal strength for an AP over 2 kilometers of minus 65 dBm. So if you've ever used sort of Wi-Fi scanners in your home, just to look at signal strength, you'll appreciate that's not bad. That's pretty good. So that's pretty good. That means if we can get that signal strength at that distance, extrapolate that, which I'll show you in a minute, we can go much further. What else did we see? Dash cams, buses, we've got Wi-Fi, and Audis. Audi drivers don't know how to change their SSIDs, or maybe they don't want to because they're proud of owning an Audi, but we can see Audis and BMWs and those APs, and that's quite interesting because you could actually track those SSIDs on Wiggle all the way home. Okay, calibration and modeling. So I said we could extrapolate that. So we've got some numbers. We've been up on the hill, and we got some numbers, and we drove back down the hill and looked at the data, the metadata. So we feed the BSSIDs into Wiggle's network detail API. There's different ways you can use Wiggle. It's a very old tool, but still cool. The network detail gives you the latitude and longitude and the last time it was seen. So if we're getting a location in Sherdington and it was current as of a few months ago, that's good enough for me. If it's a few years ago, not so confident, but a few months ago, that gives me some confidence that that's legit. We then run the Haversine formula, which, if you don't know, is just getting the distance between two pairs of coordinates, and then we feed that distance into a path loss model to come up with the error. So that error allows us to effectively work out what we're observing, the empirical measurement, versus what the pure measurement should be at that distance, and come up with a delta. So that delta, that error, we can then put that into modeling and model that and model everything else. And the answer is that. So you are able to do a large point-to-multipoint using free software like Splat or Radio Mobile, and you can do a large point-to-point using those parameters that you measured and see what was the effective range of your capability of your antenna. Now this antenna is a cheap antenna, but it's on a big hill. That's Sherdington there, 2 kilometers. That's a railway line, 5 kilometers. Could have gone further. Could have got a better antenna, could have done more. However, bigger is not always better in radio. Sometimes you want to dial it down. Gloucester, Cheltenham, loads and loads and loads of wireless access points, loads of noise. So this area in the middle, with the exception of Sherdington, is fairly rural. And so it's fairly quiet. So I did pick that deliberately. But in a city, you have to reduce your expectations. So you have to dial it back and go, well, actually, there's lots of noise here. The noise floor is much, much higher. What can we do to overcome this? So there's a couple of strategies for dealing with noise. And if you have a little list, a little toolbox of strategies for dealing with noise, then you can achieve much better signal-to-noise ratio. And if you can get a better SNR, you get a better range. So the first one's just move. Really simple. Just move. Just go somewhere else. Try somewhere else. Try a few different locations. Because you might find that you are experiencing lots of noise over here because everybody's chatting, but over here it's much quieter and you can do much more. Aim off. You don't always have to aim at the target with an antenna. It's not a laser. Okay? Radio wave has a big Fresnel zone. It's a big cone. You can actually aim off. So if you're getting lots of interfering noise over here, but your target's there, you might want to just aim off just to the side of it, and then you're catching it on the edge of the Fresnel zone. So you're still picking up the signal, but you're moved away from the noise. So you've reduced the noise, but you're still picking up your target. Use obstacles as a shield. So obstacles will impede you when you're trying to work a network at range, but you can also use them to your advantage. If you've got a city off to the left and it's causing a lot of noise, there's a lot of power bleeding over from that urban area, you might find that there's a large hill or a wall where you can actually get next to, and you can actually point your antenna and use it as a shield to effectively block all that noise so that you're not getting interfered with. And be patient. Noise in a city follows a rhythm. It's not constant. So it might be quiet at night. Just an idea. When all the Audis and the BMWs are not zipping around with their access points. Okay? Right, operating from cars. A bit of a trigger warning. There might be a Tesla joke. Did see a few in the car park. Okay, two cars here. Any guesses which one is best for collecting Wi-Fi? Anyone? Why? Yep. Okay. Yep. One of these is a high-tech SIGINT platform and the other is a Tesla. Okay. Right. A camper van is better on several counts. First of all, it's big and you've got room to work. Second, you've got privacy with the curtains. But third, it's an old camper van with old glass, and it's straight glass. So you could have your nice big antenna right up against that glass or the curtain, and it's not suffering any reflection of this nice streamlined windscreen, and it's also suffering minimal attenuation. What else do you think a Tesla or any modern car has inside its windscreen that's going to cause a problem with radio? Heating elements, thank you. So everyone likes to defrost their windscreen in the morning if you've got a modern car. That's actually a problem for signals, especially 5G, as I found the other week, field testing in Wiltshire. We were barely picking up the signal when the antenna was on the dashboard. We took it off the dashboard and put it up on the roof, and we gained about 20 decibels. So that's enormous. And this is the effect of not just a 5G signal, but also a windscreen with a heating element in. Thank you. So watch out for the windscreens. Avoid complex glass. Get an old camper van. Kill the Bluetooth. Obviously, Bluetooth's in the ISM band and it's not going to help you. And kill the engine because that generates electrical noise as well. Okay, just finish up here with a couple of references. These are some free tools. First one is a nice little tool that makes these really cool Fresnel zones. So this is handy if you want to pick your Airbnb. So I recommend you pick an Airbnb if you want to really work in comfort and have some AC power for a prolonged, enduring period. So you've got your target office. Go on Airbnb, find an Airbnb that's overlooking that office, and then use this tool to see what you will what you can expect. And that will show you in Google Earth with Google's awesome 3D buildings if you're clipping any buildings on the way to your target. Splat is a free propagation simulation tool. Use that with some UK LiDAR. You get something that's very powerful and very accurate. It'll show you all the trees and the buildings and the clutter. And I think I said there was going to be a free tool with this talk. There's a little tool here which enhances aerodump output. If you've used aerodump, part of the aircrack suite, you can export to log CSV, which is just a nice CSV format. Normally it's used for war driving, so the latitude and the longitude would be your location as you've been driving around. But what this script does is it turns that on its head, and it basically looks up the BSSIDs in Wiggle, and then uses the latitude and longitude of the SSID, and then puts in another column with the distance. So you can see I'm hitting SSIDs at 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. And this can be quite handy if you're on a hill and you're swinging an antenna around, and you just want to see how far you're actually getting based on the data that you're collecting. Okay, I think we're good for time. Any questions? Yes? So the question there was PCAPs in monitor mode, and what happens if we want to run our own PCAP on our own network? Well, the answer is as I just touched on, is it's your network. So if it's your network and your NIC is on that channel and you're associated with that network, then that's fine. It's when you're not associated with the network and you are just scanning in promiscuous mode and you're moving up and down the spectrum and you're hoovering up your neighbor's packets as well. So there is a risk because you're on that channel and other people will be on that channel. Let's say it's Wi-Fi channel 1, 2412 megs, that you might be picking up your neighbor's channels if they're on channel 1. And so you will have to set a filter, a capture filter in Wireshark, not a display filter, capture filter for your network only. Okay, any more questions? Sure. Good question. It depends on how long you're going to be there. So my best advice actually would be to not be in the camper van, set the kit up, remote it, put up a Raspberry Pi as a remote head with a LTE dongle, and then go down the beach and drink the beer. Okay, well, if there's no more questions... Oh, sorry, one more. Ooh, very good. Nearly over time, but yes, it does. In the summer, when trees are in leaf, then they do block signals, especially 5G, as a lot of 5G MVNOs are finding out right now the hard way. So, thank you, everybody.